Tonight on Next, we must get A-line safety right, since we've learned the crossing where a driver pulled in front of the train is the major route for gasoline tankers through town. We must get our facts right rather than scare people with rumors about immigration checkpoints. There's no evidence to support what you saw on Facebook today. We must get elections right, because a bill before the legislature could push America toward the popular vote and might just make Colorado irrelevant. We must get past thinking heroin happens to someone else's family.
They're still our babies, and please have compassion.
And we must not follow the directions on that sign. That's a terrible idea. Next. There is still no indication that the death of a driver hit and killed on the A-line tracks in Aurora had anything to do with the known crossing issues for the train to the plane. But here's why the stakes are so high and why federal regulators are pressing RTD to fix the A-line's issues. These are fast-moving, heavy rail trains with a series of at-grade crossings over roads. And the crossing where the death happened, that happens to be our area's busiest route for tanker trucks carrying gasoline. A block away from the crossing at Smith and Chambers is Magellan Midstream, a major gas distributor. The tankers that we see refilling gas stations all over town get their loads there, where Magellan's pipeline ends. And then the gas tankers cross the A-line to get to I-70. So the stakes for the A-line go beyond delayed trains and backed up intersections. That one crossing alone sees thousands of gallons of fuel traveling across it each day. A Truckers Industry Group says this is uniquely dangerous.
Why do we want to put this level of risk out there? I mean, you know, I don't think we have another place possibly in the country where we would have that much interaction between hazardous material vehicles and a commuter rail line.
RTD provided the trucking industry with alternate routes, but the trucking companies haven't evaluated those for the safety of hazardous truck travel. The truckers want RTD and the city of Aurora to double-check those routes and make any improvements necessary so they're safe. It's worth pointing out that RTD insists that the only issue with those crossing gates on the A-line is that the gates are coming down too early and staying down too long. Facebook today is covered in posts about supposed immigration checkpoints around town, just as the immigrant community rallies around a woman facing deportation as she takes sanctuary in a church. First are the rumors of the checkpoints. Posts that claim Immigration and Customs Enforcement have set up checkpoints in Aurora, on Colfax, on Tower Road, and in Mount Mellow. The posts have been shared hundreds of times. There's no evidence to suggest that they are true. I repeat to you, we have seen no evidence to suggest that ICE is conducting checkpoints in our area. Also, an ICE spokesperson says they're not doing any widespread operations in Colorado, as has been happening in other states. And here's why these rumors are so dangerous. We have seen this happen in other cities. They can cause families to flee, to go underground, to take chances that put people, including children, in great danger. And spreading these rumors online doesn't help anyone. Listen, if ICE isn't being honest about enforcement action in Colorado, we will investigate that. But that would need to start with someone offering something that resembles proof of all those online claims. Now, it is a fact that immigration agents typically will not enter a house of worship to arrest someone. And that is why Jeanette Vizguerra is sleeping in a church in Denver tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night for the foreseeable future. Vizguerra didn't go to her deportation hearing this morning. She expected that she would be sent back to Mexico, where she says that she was the victim of a crime. She's been in the U.S. for 20 years. She's a convicted criminal here for falsifying documents tied to a traffic ticket. She's been allowed to stay, despite that fact, a half-dozen different times. Vizguerra didn't go to face ICE today because she expected that this time, under President Trump, it would be different.
All this time since December, they've been saying that they're reviewing my case. What is there to review? I am a victim of crime who has a U visa pending.
ICE, under its own guidance, is supposed to grant stays of removal to allow the government to make a decision. And we believe that because in this country we believe in due process. We believe in fairness. We believe you get your fair shake in the legal system, because if it's not just and it's not fair and you don't get your shake, it's not a legal system.
Vizguerra's attorney says she will continue applying for that visa. Her children, you see there, are American citizens, and they have joined their mother in the church where she's taken sanctuary.
Now, Vizguerra is from Aurora, but is seeking refuge in Denver. Mayor Michael Hancock has already released a statement supporting her. It says, in part, what's happening to Jeanette Vizguerra is appalling and the results of a broken immigration system, a system made worse by the chaotic actions of the White House and ICE. Jeanette is not a threat to our community. She is a mother of 4, an active community member, and someone who has persistently pursued legal status through the proper channels. We did ask the mayor's office if these are just words of support or if the city will take some sort of action. His spokesman says the city's hands are tied since this is a federal issue. So why is Jeanette allowed to stay in a church without fear of getting arrested? There are certain locations considered sensitive, where ICE officers will rarely make arrests. Churches, synagogues and mosques, hospitals, schools, daycares, and school bus stops. ICE will go into those locations to make an arrest when a supervisor has given prior approval or there are circumstances related to national security, terrorism, or public safety. So it appears that you will be able to stay there for a while.
Yeah, we certainly have seen similar cases, in fact, at that church. Steve, thank you. A state representative is defending his decision to call a colleague a half-Latino as they battled over immigration reform. Democratic State Rep Joe Salazar of Thornton favors giving sanctuary to people here illegally. Republican State Rep Dave Williams of Colorado Springs wants to strengthen immigration enforcement. Here's how Salazar described Williams at a Latino community forum last month.
In fact, there's an ugliness around the bill. Write his name down, Representative Dave Williams. He is half Latino. Write his name down and call him tomorrow. Visit his office tomorrow and tell him that we will not tolerate any more divisiveness coming from the Republican Party.
No, we will not.
Representative Williams was clearly upset and went to the floor of the House today to respond.
One of our members referred to me as a half-Latino, and this term was used as a means to diminish my standing on this policy issue and to lessen my credibility within the Latino community. These tactics are disgraceful and in poor taste. And I'm sorry that my surname doesn't match my ethnicity or my heritage, but I'm proud of who I am and where I come from.
Representative Salazar fired back on the phone with me today, saying he was not attempting to deny anyone their heritage.
No, I mean, this has nothing to do with identity politics. This has to do with the fact that that is, in fact, a truth that he described himself that way. So he can try to make hay out of it as much as he wants, but the ultimate situation that we're looking at here is he's bringing a bill that is hateful, it's spiteful, and it terrorizes the Latino community, and that's why we have so many community members at that forum.
You can decide where you come down on this, whether this is about fake outrage or whether it's about identity politics. But here are my thoughts. Representative Salazar calling a conservative colleague a half-Latino reminded me of criticism that we have heard of conservative commentators who have appeared here over the years. Viewers have suggested that our Republican political expert Kelly Maher doesn't represent women because she's a conservative, and that our former GOP political expert Ryan Frazier, who's black, shouldn't be speaking to minority issues. We've never heard that about our Democratic analysts, that James Mejia was somehow less than Latino for something that he said, or that Andrew Romanoff didn't represent a Jewish perspective. I hope here on Next we can debate people's ideas, rather than expect that any one person should be forced to represent an identity, or be stripped of that identity for their views. So there's this state-by-state patchwork effort these days to force America into a popular vote system for the presidential election. The debate came to the Colorado State House today, and Republicans voted the measure down. Politics guy Brandon Ritterman explains it wasn't exactly a repeal of the Electoral College.
Repealing the Electoral College requires amending the U.S. Constitution, which is really stinking hard to do. But the Constitution already gives states the power to decide how to allocate their votes in the Electoral College, and that's how this plan is designed to work. It's an agreement between a bunch of states, called a compact, to retool how they award their Electoral College votes. All the states in the agreement would promise their electoral votes to the winner of the national popular vote, regardless of who wins the state. state. You'd have to go back to the year 2000 for this to have mattered in Colorado. George W. Bush won Colorado, but Al Gore won the popular vote. Under this plan, Colorado's 9 electoral votes would have gone to Gore, and that alone would have been enough to send him to the White House instead of Bush. This plan has been passed into law in 10 states, including California and New York, also in Washington, D.C., and that means the states aren't actually promising their electoral votes to the national popular vote winner just yet. This plan wouldn't take effect until enough states are in it to get to 270 electoral votes, enough to guarantee the White House to the person who wins the national popular vote. Which means not all states have to adopt the plan to change how the nation picks a president. But they still need several more states to join the effort in order to make this change. For Next, I'm Brandon Rittiman.
A mother takes us to the spot in Denver where her son bought his very last dose of heroin. When President Trump tweets, the world listens, but do we get it? And the most Colorado thing we saw today is the combination of two messy processes, fermentation and representation. Next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is the bipartisan Colorado coalition in Congress for the Kombucha Act. Republicans and Democrats trying to remove federal alcohol taxes on kombucha, the very low alcohol fermented tea that all the hipsters like. I like ridiculous acronyms, which is why I love that the Kombucha Act stands for Keeping Our Manufacturers from Being Unfairly Taxed While Championing Health Act. There's a serious debate amongst journalists about how to cover President Trump's tweets, as serious policy, as distractions. So here on Next, we try to bring you in on these conversations and how we approach difficult calls. And we frequently reach out to experts in our field to hear their perspective, like Al Tompkins with the journalism think tank, the Poynter Institute.
Almost anything the president says is news, whether the president says it on camera or whether the president says it on Twitter. Almost anything that the president says has the power to move markets and make our friends and enemies react. When the president writes something on Twitter, it's probably going to be news, even if it seems like it's a pretty small thing.
So today, President Trump held a joint press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where President Trump called only on conservative media outlets. This is becoming a bit of a habit.
If the administration thinks that somehow not calling on a traditional White House reporter is going to somehow turn off the tap of information, I've got news for them. The opposite will happen. It's a little like fishing, where you're twitching the bait in the water. All you're doing is just pulling the fish closer and closer, and they're going to really go after it, even more so than if you offered plausible responses in a news conference.
That makes good sense to me, but to be honest with you, I don't know that I blame the president for calling on friendly media outlets. I would say this to the reporters who work for those more partisan outlets. If you're only being called on because the president or the person at the podium knows that you won't ask the question that's on everyone's minds, perhaps it's time for the reporter to do a bit of self-reflection. For every person lying stoned along the Cherry Creek Trail, there's often a mother out there hoping to break the grip of that disease. One mother hopes her story will make others take notice. And there is no way not to notice that this week just feels like spring. You don't need a 4-minute weather forecast to tell you it's beautiful. I'll take a stab at doing the forecast myself. Next. So our producer, Cody, the guy you just saw right over there, was asking around the office today about the weather. Is this the end of winter? Silly Cody. He's moved here from Texas. You don't know any better. Hey, don't say that. No. He's one of the good guys from Texas, all right? And even natives haven't seen a February this warm in Colorado in a long, long time.
Last Friday, when it was 80 degrees, We broke a record. That broke a record.
Yeah, that's the best part about living down here.
Yesterday might have broken a record, or today. It's going to be 71 and the record is 70.
We're just taking advantage of this beautiful, sunshiny day in Colorado.
We can head up to the mountains where there's snow and get back here and it's beautiful sunshine.
You can anticipate some snow in May and April as well, so this is just a nice little break. February 13th of last year, I tore my rotator cuff, so I'm just kind of playing back into my game so I can start playing matches again this summer.
His name is Jax. He's 6 years old. He's my child. He is going in tomorrow for some surgery, so we figured we'd bring him out here today and let him run off the energy before he takes the plunge tomorrow.
I live close by, so it's a nice little walk over here, get some exercise for a couple hours, and then go back to work.
Why, hello, it's still me. Your weather forecast does not require a long explanation tonight. Seriously, how long does it take to say it's going to be nice out tomorrow and Friday and spring-like weather, clear through the weekend? I'm no meteorologist, but that looks mighty fine. The Cherry Creek Trail is a hot spot for cyclists and for runners and for drug dealers and addicts. It's the place where Judy says her son bought his fatal dose of heroin. She emailed Next this week to share her story, to let everyone know that no one is immune from this epidemic.
It just shouldn't be like this. Parents shouldn't have to bury their kids. It's the morning of July 30th, 2015. I was sitting on my couch in my house. My son's stepmom called me on the phone and told me that Andy didn't make it. And in further questioning her, I said, "What do you mean he didn't make it?" She said they tried to revive him at the hospital and he didn't make it. He died of an overdose. He didn't have ID on him when he was brought in, and I didn't find out about his death until about 9 a.m. and he had died at about 3:20 a.m. And that's the most heart-wrenching thing for a mom or a dad to go through. This is a picture, my last picture I have of Andy, and he looks pretty darn healthy here, but boy, he was suffering. He was suffering a lot and in a lot of pain, just incredible pain, and didn't really understand the depths of his disease. And I tried my darndest to get him to get help. I said I would pay for it. I would do whatever I could to move heaven and earth to get him well. My niece had died about 19 months prior to Andy. Her name was Mackenzie, and she died at the age of 18 3/4 of a heroin overdose as well. So I was familiar with the disease. It still was heart-wrenching, and I was so worried about my son. I thought, and I told him, you know, your cousin has died of the same thing. Please, Andy, please, please, let's get help. And he just wouldn't do that. Just want to share my story, Andy's story, my niece Mackenzie's story, in hopes that we can maybe end this stigma and really work towards keeping our kids alive, because we are losing so many kids every day to this devastating epidemic. Don't be naive and think that it can't happen to your kid, because unfortunately it can. I don't care how old they are, whether they're a baby, a toddler, a kid growing up, or an adult, a grown adult, they're still our babies. And I didn't get to kiss him goodbye.
It's a sign, and it was spotted by an ex-viewer named Kathy, who saw it on her way to work this morning near Alameda and I-25. Open, come in. I don't know, that doesn't seem safe to me. I'm sure it's from some open house or business, and I'm equally sure that we have no business climbing into the clutches of a garbage truck, even if we are invited by a nice sign like that. Send us the signs that catch your eye. You can get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext or email next@9news.com. A stack of your feedback tonight about our commentary about identity and politics and judging people by their ideas. Lisa Streno-Weninger, Samara Williams, Rebecca Cardenas-Norris all wrote it about that. And Bill said, really appreciate the balance that you bring to sensitive political issues, not favoring liberals or conservatives. Rare. I don't know if it's rare, Bill, but I hope that it interests people. I hope we see you next time.